And finally, there is so much history at Dodger Stadium. I found a story that takes us all the way back to the 1965 World Series. Now, two men that didn't know each other at the time but had very different views of the game. Now, Sweet Lou Johnson played hero for the Los Angeles Dodgers, while a 17-year-old named Norm Peters was simply a hot dog vendor so he could watch his beloved Minnesota Twins play in the big game. Now, I brought these guys back together, yes, 50 years later. We're going to start the story with more on this series from Dodger historian Mark Langell.
It was an amazing World Series. When you look back at 1955, people think that's the first and only championship in Brooklyn, but they also forget that the Dodgers lost the first two games. And it was the same thing in 1965. After sweeping the Yankees and making it look so easy, suddenly Game 1 of 1965 was interesting because Sandy Koufax, the ace pitcher, is not going to pitch because of Yom Kippur. And they lose the game. Don Drysdale gets knocked out of the box, and he has the presence of mind, even though he's on his way to a 7-2 loss. When Alston gets to the mound, he says, "I'll bet you wish I was Jewish." And, you know, they had that laugh because what are you going to do? So Koufax comes back in Game 2. He's going to even the series, right? No, he loses. So suddenly, it's 7-2, 5-1. They're in a hole. They go back to Los Angeles, and how confident could you possibly be knowing that the Twins, this team, this up-and-coming team with Soyo Versailles, the MVP of the American League, and other powerful people like Harmon Killebrew, they're up 2-0. They're in the driver's seat. Suddenly, Claude Osteen comes up with the game of his life and shuts out the Twins in Game 3. Suddenly there's hope, and the Dodgers win Games 4 and 5. So then they go back to Minnesota thinking they're in the driver's seat at 3-2. And just like 1955, the Dodgers were in the same position, and they lost the possible clinching Game 6 on the road. So now it's all going to come down to a Game 7. Koufax is going to pitch on 2 days rest. He's got nothing but a fastball after the 6th inning. Somehow he ekes out a 2-0 victory. But the surprise in all of that is Lou Johnson, because he hits a home run in the 4th inning. The Dodgers score another run. But Lou really typified that season because Tommy Davis had injured himself in late April, sliding into second base, and suddenly, without a two-time National League batting champ, what are you going to do? And in spring training 1965, Lou Johnson was not even on the 40-man roster. He had arrived in 1964, spent the entire year at AAA. They'd gotten him in a trade for Larry Sherry, but it was just insurance. Nobody gave it a second thought. So 1965 comes around. They don't even think about Lou as far as a possibility. And when he first reported to the team in Cincinnati, he really had to introduce himself because he had spent all that time in the minor league clubhouse in spring training 1965. So just imagine going from spring training 65, playing on the side fields, you're a journeyman, you haven't been in the major league since 1962, and suddenly you're in the middle of this champagne celebration 6 months later in Minnesota. Just an amazing year. Whenever you think of 1965, Sandy Koufax because of the perfect game and the shutout in Game 7, but it's also definitely the year of Lou Johnson.
I'm sitting here with two gentlemen who were at the 1965 World Series. Sweet Lou, you played in the World Series. Norm, you were selling hot dogs at the World Series in Minnesota.
Yes, I was, and you could say I was playing too, because I was the worst hot dog salesman the Minnesota Twins ever had. When the game would start, I would sit on my hot dog box, sit down and watch the game. Anyone's going to buy a hot dog for me, they had to wait between innings because I was just watching the game.
How did you get that job?
Well, when you're young, you know, 16, 17, you're just looking for work. So, and I lived about a mile away from the ballpark, and I wanted to see a lot of baseball, and this was a great way to do it. You know, go be a vendor, and then get inside the stadium and just to enjoy some, at that time, great baseball.
Okay, and you were pretty much on a high because the first two games, Dodgers were supposed to win. They had the best pitchers, but the Twins won those two games.
Yeah, Twins came through, won the first two. Then, unfortunately, they had to go to Los Angeles.
Right here, where we are right now.
Right where we are now. And then they won the next three. And then, thank goodness for Jim Mudcat Grant, when they went back to Minnesota, he gave the Twins a victory to knot it up at 3 games apiece, and then that dreaded Game 7.
Sweet Lou, you came from spring training that year and went all the way to the World Series. Did you have time to think about that?
I had been thinking about that 20 years prior too. So And to me, it was a blessing. You know, I was prepared to do anything, just get to the major leagues at the time. But to have a season like that after so many years of just being on the borderline, you cherish it a little more. And a lot of people was happy for me, and all my family and everybody.
When you think back to game 1 and 2 that you were supposed to win, the Dodgers were supposed to win those 2 games, and you didn't, what's going through your mind in the clubhouse as a player?
It was a money thing.
The truth comes out.
The longer we stay, the more money we get.
That's right.
And they know I needed it bad, you know. You know, being a player, you didn't think about that too much. I didn't. My season was a season of renovation where I got a chance to show what I could do in the years that I missed. Okay, it was like a revenge for part of my life, you know, and luckily I got a couple of hits.
Just a couple at the right time.
Yeah, right time.
Do you remember a lot of Dodger fans being in Minnesota when you were playing there?
He wasn't. And I used to watch him all the time.
He was not Sweet Lou in Minnesota. Nobody was yelling, Sweet Lou, Sweet Lou at that time.
At that time.
Oh, they were.
But you know, we didn't have too many fans. You know, we coming from L.A.
Right.
And we came in our private plane, you know. The few people were there were like glad to be in a World Series, and the few that knew the everyday players from what they, Minnesota. We all kind of come together to make this a big one, okay? We really did. And if we got to the 7th game, I know we had a chance because Khufu was going to come
Khufu, who didn't play in the first game because he had to honor Yom Kippur.
Well, he was getting ready for the cold weather. You know, you have to do a little testing in there, you know. It was kind of chilly, though. That's a big chill coming from Los Angeles to there.
Was it?
And figure, yeah, you know, that's wintertime back there in the Ice Bowl.
What kind of a manager was Walter Alston? Was he nervous? Was he a calm manager? How did he sort of take the beginning of that series?
He liked me. He liked me. He liked me because I had to hustle, especially after Tommy Davis had broke his ankle. And the team was kind of in a little dilemma. And I came along because I had been, you know, spark plug. And he gave me a chance to play. That's all I wanted. There was a chance to play, regardless. And for that, I would be so grateful for that.
When you walk out here on this field, this very field where you played, what goes through your mind?
World Series, right? It does.
Night before Game 7, where were you?
Trying to get to my room. On time.
Where were you, Norm?
Let's see. I was forgetting to do homework because I was going to the University of Minnesota and just geared up for Game 7. And the thing is that Lou mentions, they had this gentleman named Sandy pitching for them. We had Jim Cott on the mound. If you ever want to have a Game 7, Sandy Koufax against Jim Cott, and it was 0-0 until this young man puts it in the bleachers, and that proved to be the game winner right there. Sweet Lou.
So, Sweet Lou, you were a little late for that game, I hear, Game 7?
Yes.
What happened that morning?
Nothing. Here's the whole key, and I didn't tell a lie. I had a friend of mine who worked up there. So he had me for breakfast. I didn't ride the bus. I usually ride the bus. When I got there, it was a little late. No, it wasn't a little late. I'm going to take that back. What happened was...
whenever something
what happened
was...
That magical man, our manager, had arms as big as Popeye's. And I noticed the strength he had because he used to go through the locker lifting players, which imagine. And I watched that all summer long. First thing popped in my head, oh God, I hope we don't have to go through that. I will never ever play again in baseball. And he didn't scold me. I can't say what he said. But it was uplift in two ways. The confidence he had in me. That's where I saw it. The confidence after all the years I spent in the minor leagues. He had confidence in telling me some things without getting harsh. And that's what that was. And that's what I took it. You know, I got to do something, but I was scared.
Well, it's whatever happened the night before, this guy came to play in Game 7. And he did what he had to do. He hurt my feelings, but he lit up all the fans in Los Angeles.
Oh, God.
Do you remember what you said to Sandy Koufax that morning?
No.
Maybe something about that you would make sure you got the hit?
Yeah. I told him I was going to get 1 run, so you stop it at that, okay?
There we go.
0. Then we end up getting 2 runs, and I was a little mad at that, you know. I would like to say a little something about Sandy in relations to me. He took me by the hand. Now, here's a man worldwide come to get it and touching a guy who had been in baseball, minor leagues for so long, and he just did some things for me. You know, one time I don't like to wear socks in the summertime, so he put 6 pair of socks in the dressing room and said, you don't have to wear them same socks all year. Little things like that, which is comfort. You know, how many people get a chance to be a friend of Drysdale and go for big pictures like that? That's a motivation. That's the way I looked at it, you know.
Yeah, and I think they felt the same way about you.
Yes, and I was doing pretty good during that year. I was kind of clutch, because we needed all the clutch we had after Tommy Davis broke his ankle.
You were breaking his heart, but you were not breaking Dodger fans' heart.
And I'm glad we are old enough to know about that now, because we didn't argue, we laughed about it.
Doesn't mean I'm forgiving you or anything.
No, you can't.
You know,
Norm, you know, you grew up to be a reporter. When was the first time you met Sweet Lou?
when I moved out here and then began to cover the Dodgers, and to find out this Sweet Lou Johnson that everybody talks about is just that. He is, when you meet him, you love him. He's that kind of guy. And although it didn't make that home run any easier for me to take back in Game 7, we become friends, and I'm honored for it.
Oh,